All right, welcome. Thank you, everyone. I want to start off by thanking Gerald, Shaw, and the DECODE team for putting this wonderful panel together, curating the topics that really reflects the interest of this community. Today, we will talk about when to pivot, how to pivot, and how to validate ideas quickly and cheaply. So hopefully, we can walk out of the door with solid ideas that you can apply on Monday. So I am Lynn, Jiao. I am the head of growth and strategy at JUNOCO. We are a skincare company based in the Bay Area. Before that, I have been investing as early stage investor at Free as Fund, backing founders in consumer AI, and biotech. And we are joined by three incredible leaders. So first of all, please join me in welcoming Joy, Jared, and Vladimir. I think pivot is a topic where founders say often, but means very different things for different people. So let's get it grounded first. Jared, if you can help us explain what pivot is.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, everyone. Great to meet you. Yeah, I think to define pivot, I think it makes sense to somewhat ground kind of what is the entrepreneurial endeavor around experimentation, validating ideas. I think that businesses ultimately have to answer four simple questions, and we often get lost trying to answer these for viability. So one is, can you build it? Essentially, whatever it is that you're trying to build. The second is, okay, if you build it, can you sell it? Pretty straightforward. Third, if you sell it, can you make money selling it? Can you make profit selling it? And then fourth, can you sustain that? Because other people are going to see you making money, so is there something in the way you're building the business that will be durable? When you put it that way, obviously that maps to kind of broad categories of risks that you're trying to avoid while building the company. So tech risk, market risk, execution risk, et cetera. And so I think pivoting is partly just, okay, as you have different ideas around these different subtopics and you're trying to navigate around them, but ultimately it's in service of answering these basic questions for kind of what your purpose is as a company.
Love that. Yes. So it's not about early idea iteration. It's more about later phase of post moment where you have to realize, I guess, strategically, you have to change the course, maybe. What's your first pivot experience with Me Through?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think to some extent we're pivoting in small and large ways every day, I think, in building a company. Maybe let me make one more point that I think will be helpful to the point about idea validation. I think when you're working on a company, there's kind of, how would I say, a sequence of maybe another four questions that you're answering. So the first question is like, what vision of the future is exciting to you? Like, what are you actually trying to do? And you should ideally have something pretty clear in your mind of like what vision the future is exciting, or at least what vision you want to avoid in some realm of the world. Secondly, what is your thesis for what needs to happen for that vision to manifest, for that to become real? You're pivoting as slightly as you'll pivot as that evolves. Thirdly, okay, among the things that need to happen, which are already happening with the right velocity, which are moving in the right direction, which are moving in the right direction with the right speed, given the work that others in the ecosystem are doing. And then lastly, okay, for the things that aren't moving in the right direction, where can you move the needle, given your production skills, assets? And so, obviously each of those subsequent three questions, the first question might not change very much, like what vision of the future is exciting to you, but your thesis for what needs to happen, your understanding of what's already happening, and your understanding of where you can actually move the needle, and what you thought were your predilections and skills, and maybe they aren't, that will change pretty rapidly. So I think that you pivot every time you get new data about those things.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like every time we ask the first pivot story, there is always half wisdom and half trauma, but I hear more wisdom over there. Vladimir, so what was your pivot experience?
I mean, overall, like before Higgsfield, I sold a couple companies, so I've seen different pivots. I would say, I think what I need to mention that in the age of generative AI, the speed is like light speed, actually, as the previous speaker said. So I would say what we see now in Higgsfield, and one of the reasons why we kind of we got to the place where we are, we've been able to iterate fast, because I think there is not always there is a room for a 120 degrees pivot, but there is a lot of pivots, as he said, happening every day. Because I think this is actually what Gen AI and AI overall helps you, that you see what people react on your product, And with the current speed of the development and current speed of growth, you can act to these responses faster than ever. So you can iterate faster. It doesn't mean always that you will have 180 pivots that you're, for example, doing B2B SaaS, and now you're becoming next snapshot. But even like towards like if you're like having this like the chosen path, inside this path, there is a lot of small pivots every day.
So what would be some concrete signals that you would use to guide your pivot?
Honestly, I think the best and the only signal that I believe is customer feedback. This is actually like what like we did in Higgsfield. We continuously are in contact with actually paying customers. I mean, honestly, like feedback. Don't don't go over the market and be like, okay, I know everything. Honestly, the best insights that we got was from the customers. Like ask people for actually using it, paying for a product.
Yeah, I love that 100%. Joy, I want to bring you in here. So you have met hundreds of founders in the past. What is one red flag, I would say, that you see when founders pivot emotionally, not because of strategically?
Very good question. Actually, we have seen founders pivot emotionally many times. They either pivot too early or they pivot too late. So many founders, they kind of like easy to fall into this kind of a panic. They have seen some like early signals. They are afraid their solution, their product won't work. So before they get more data, have a better understanding about what has really happened and what might happen, they start to pivot. So that's what we call like pivot too early. And more often we see founders, they pivot too late, which we understand because they fall in love with the baby they have created. So they easily tend to have this attitude, which we call product defending attitude. And they become more stubborn than before, and they hold up their ego a little bit longer. When the market like screams out at them and they have to do the pivot, usually it was too late to do the pivot because the market probably has already moved on. Worst of the worst is they run out of money and they couldn't finish the pivot. So all we want to do is make sure we can come up with a strategic pivot, meaning you collect enough data. I agree with what he just mentioned. Listen to the customer's feedback. So here are some suggestions. You listen to two things. One is the data and one is your customer. Data, things like related to engagement and their willingness to pay, their retention rate, and also are they willing to refer this product to some other people. Another thing is like you need to observe their behavior. Besides what they say through their feedback survey questionnaire, you'd better sit next to them, watch their behavior, and see if they really want to use your product. Yeah.
I love that. So building on that, Jared, you are deep in AI infrastructure. So how can you tell when the issue is with market pool, not a model performance?
Oh, yeah. Interesting question. Yeah, I think when it comes to the market pull versus model performance question, I think that these things are deeply coupled. Like the market performance is tied, the market pull is tied to the model performance. So at the highest levels of the stack, there's kind of, maybe kind of two different regimes that customers fall into. Some customers, for some of these most kind of frontier models, want high reliability, the kind of bleeding edge of intelligence, and are relatively price inelastic. Like they don't really care about cost. They just want to move fast. They're trying to validate an idea. They're trying to get something to work that doesn't work right now. And they really don't care at all about cost. Like I'll give an example that may not be fully faithful, but let's say for a model, for a company like Harvey, with legal AI, the current frontier models are already more than cheap enough. $10 per million tokens for GPT-5 is more than cheap enough. They don't want 1 million tokens. 1 million tokens is like 500-page books at 300 words per page density. So it's like a lot. They want one legal brief that is the right, a couple thousand tokens, that's high fidelity, and they'd be willing to pay a lot for that. And then the other extreme, you have companies that have use cases like web agents or browser agents, or they're doing agentic RAG, and they want something really, really cheap, and they don't need a frontier model. They can use a small model like Quinn. So I think there's different regimes that customers fall into. And actually, related to your earlier question about pivots, which I didn't fully answer concretely for us, I think one thing I didn't appreciate early on that affected our product strategy more later was there's kind of three dimensions of quality for the infrastructure. One is, basically there's three types of issues: cost, capacity, and complexity issues. And I think we focused a lot on cost early on, but actually realized that as a lot of our customers scale, a lot of our customers, when they started with us, they were small and didn't have money. But as they scaled, they stopped caring at all about cost. They just wanted to move fast. And I don't think we fully appreciate that. Like, actually, they don't care at all about cost. They're willing to pay 4x more for something if it helps them move faster. So we started putting more and more effort into complexity and kind of ease of use and reliability and things like that.
Thank you for sharing that story. Okay, decision made. We are pivoting. What is your 30-day playbook look like? Who do you tell? What do you kill? And how do you rebuild trust if you have to? And Vladimir, you are at the frontier of AI videos, and we all know partnerships move really fast. So how do you reposition the story when your product direction change overnight?
I would say the first I would start like why this product like changed, because like normally this is like it's caused by something. As I say, like if it's like emotional decision, it's bad. Like you can't emotionally change the product on 180 degrees. As I totally agree with your colleague, it's either data or customer feedback or ideally both. And so I would say the communication matters, but I would say like the point is like if you need to have a significant pivot, it means that you are, for example, don't have enough like paying customers. So like you need to address the new audience more than communicate them with the previous, because if you're making significant pivot, it means that like your previous strategy didn't work well for you. So it's like more about the new communication and like searching for the new partners than communicating with the previous. The point is like, if you're not completely killing the previous product, your product is good enough for the previous, but for the people who are already using you. The problem is that like this people is not enough for you. So I would say the strategy should be more like understanding with whom you will communicate now, because as I say, like it's not about I have never seen that people like literally, okay, we're killing previous product, we're making new. It's not pivot, it's like restart of the company. Normally it's like you're like how it looks in reality. You're adding an additional, for example, like you've been B2C and you're like, okay, we should try B2B. So you're not like completely, it's not about, because your communication with B2C was already good enough to get them. So like, we don't talk about like 0-day companies. So it's more about that you're trying to establish the new communication, completely new communication channel. For example, normally what I see in a pivots is like the vertical was like, for example, the company was doing the customer support for hospitals, and now they're like, car insurance is actually guys who actually were like approaching us to pay us. So you don't stop communicating with the hospitals, you just double down on new thing that you like discovered, because say like the pivot is not like, okay, now we're like selling meat, like from B2B SaaS. No, it's like more about that, like, okay, we discovered that there is a vertical who is willing to pay more, who are like more sticky, who are like have a better retention, or like who are just like somehow fits our new strategy better. And then you're like looking for these guys. Normally you don't have them yet because this is the nature of pivot. You didn't address them before, so now you're addressing them. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't like change the strategy. I will just, I would say, double down on a new direction. Like this.
I love that. I can see some vivid moments of under that story right there. Joy, so you have led both investment and also business. What would be the framework that you could share with us to realign the trust with the investors during a pivot, especially when maybe like data isn't on your side yet?
First, I want to share with you guys, most of the investors, we can handle uncertainties and the change, but we really don't like surprises and confusions. So when you are about to think about whether or not you're going to make the decision about pivot, you probably need to think about how am I going to communicate with the investors already. Don't wait until the next scheduled board meeting and bring this idea up.
Noted.
Okay, so no surprises. And we understand because the world is like a continuously changing, especially with AI and all the technologies. Well, we would like to be on your side. So you communicate with us clearly, proactively, and also transparently. When I say transparently, tell us the real reason behind your pivot, why you have to do it. And also, what is your plan? And how long will you have a better picture to help you to understand? And also, tell us how much money you have in your bank. Can you survive? This is a serious problem. If you don't think you can survive, let us know. We probably can chip in to help you financially, or we probably can help you to do another round of fundraising to help you to successfully get the pivot done. So that's that one. That's the communication part. And another part is do not always look at us as someone give you money or someone you need to report to. Use us. We are there. We'd love to collaborate with the founders. We'd love to give you guys advices and also use us as sounding board. Ask us our feedback about how do we think about your ideas. Maybe we think stupid. We can give you some kind of like smart suggestions. Give us the chances to say something. So I do think like collaborate with us. And another thing I really enjoy is like hand in hand work together with the founders through the hard times, through the challenges, because in that way we can develop a very important trust, and this is a very important relationship which can benefit both sides for a long run. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like this room is going to have a lot of people following you afterwards, asking for fund, because we all love good investors. All right, cool. So the ship has turned. The next big question is how to validate quickly and cheaply. And this question is for Jared. Jared, do you remember the smartest, then the cheapest validation hack you had ever run that maybe not costing anything but tells you almost everything?
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I guess it's kind of it's a relative thing, because in our space, infrastructure, everything is like takes a decent amount of work, even for simple ideas. But I guess one thing that we've used to help us a lot is rather than building kind of a fully fledged GUI experience, web experience around things, this is a bit esoteric to our product, but which it turns out is a lot faster and simpler to push initial versions of ideas via the CLI or the API first alone, because you don't need UX and you can make it very polished just based on the core scaffolding. And so you can kind of move a lot faster via the CLI and the API. And so we've used that type of tactic quite a bit. And so I think it's just about finding, kind of understanding what matters most for your customers, and finding a way to kind of get your ideas in front of them to expose them as useful or not. And then the customers, to Vladimir's point, will kind of pull you along, tell you what you need. So rather than for, building something, in the GUI that has a lot of flourish, like your customers are trying to get a job done, find the simplest way to help them get the job done that's robust and go from there. So for us, I was using our API and CLI over GUI, for example. Kind of specific, but hopefully helpful.
For the early stage founders in the room, this might be something that saves you 6 months of pain, I think. Okay, so Vladimir, do you have anything to add?
So, my point is, like, the only thing I want to add, pivot fast. Like, if you do this fast, because currently the market is changing rapidly, and like the most successful companies that I've seen in Silicon Valley, including us, for example, we tried different things. Some worked, some not, but those who worked, we doubled down. Like Mercer is a great example. Like Mercer was an HR agency. Like now it's a 10 billion data lab. Like, the point is, like, I would say what I will think, be open, like not like focus on your ego, because exactly what, like as a colleague said, that many founders are very idea protective. And this actually blinds them for the opportunities around. Because sometimes you're doing the technology, but you're not selling it to the right people. And many technologies are actually dual use. The great example is Mercer. They've been starting as a HR agency. Now they're the biggest data lab in the world. By far, they outbid like Turing by crazy. Because they understood that there is a high chance that what you're doing is needed somewhere else, who is going to pay for this premium. This we understood. And the truth is, honestly, sometimes you can be very surprised how your technology can be used in the hands of like vertical professionals. Especially currently with like I would say commoditization of compute. We will have a lot of interesting vertical companies like Open Evidence, like a lot of the companies that I didn't even know that it's possible will embrace. So like I would say, be open and listen to the market and to the people.
Be open and listen. And the last question, I'll get back to Joy. So what is one tactic that you see that founders really love, but might give false confidence?
Oh, good question. I would say they ask the wrong question to the wrong group of people. they don't have the real users. They're asking the questions to get to the feedback they need. When I say run questions, usually questions they ask like, do you like it? Do you prefer to use it? Instead, you should ask questions related to revenue, related to their willingness to pay. So that's that. And when I say run group of people, don't go to your family members, don't go to your friends, and don't go to your internal staff or people you have worked with, or some people you got to know through warm introductions, because those people have already had, we call vested interest in you, either emotionally, financially, or socially. And many of them, they want to see you become successful. And they may give you inspiring, encouraging, positive feedback, but which could be dangerously wrong. And based upon that, and you probably would shift to the wrong direction and do some wrong, make some wrong, stupid decisions. So all what you need to do is look for the real users. Those users, so they have already experienced the pain. They have already looked for the similar solutions, or they are using some massive workarounds. And you look for those users and then ask them those questions. And as I said, do not only pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. So when the users, they pay, they stay, and they tell other people about your product, about your solution, that's when the validation is done. All the other things are just noises.
Look for real users, not the noise. Someone write down that deserve a tweet. Okay, all right. So I guess we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Where do we start?
Thank you so much. I think you've all mentioned examples of pricing, trying to find the willingness to pay of customers. I think, Jared, you gave an example where a customer might be willing to pay 4x what you were charging. What is the best way to try and explore pricing? Are there tools, techniques? I know that a lot of companies do tiered pricing, but I feel like that's a bit of a blunt tool. So just curious if there are tools or software you use for this.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. I might not be the best person to ask because we have a unique pricing scheme. So our platform actually prices purely by kind of second price auctions, a unique auction type of scheme. And so long story short, that's partly because of our field. Like we think that it's kind of difficult to find efficient prices in the ways that computer is typically sold. So we let the customers determine the prices. So the price during the day might be 5x higher than it is at night. It's on users and that somewhat captures the idea that, okay, well, if we design tools to make it easier for users to use it at night, to run their jobs in batch mode, if it's not a time-sensitive job, then that kind of evens things out, etc. And so we actually find pricing so hard that we decide to avoid it overall and let the algorithms decide it. So in some ways, I might not be the best person to ask. So I don't know.
So with a lot of image, video, and audio AI startups in particular, like Higgsfield, there's the problem with these AI tourists, which are users that are coming on, maybe creating something and then churning, so very high churn rates. How do you deal with that? And how do you approach finding PMF in this space?
Oh, it's actually like, I would say, give the lady afterwards, please. She literally goes first. Yeah. So the answer is like very simple and complicated at the same point. So in Higgsfield, the guys who are churning the most are consumers. The guys who are prosumers are like way more sticky. So Higgsfield is the biggest prosumer platform. So we are focusing on the people who make money using our platform. And this is what the main advice I'm suggesting to all the video and audio Gen AI. Focus on the people who make money using your platform because they're the most sticky. Churn in a pure consumer is crazy, and I know very few purely successful consumer. It's extremely hard, and you need to fundraise significantly more money. So the answer is if the people are making money with you, they're significantly way more sticky because they don't want to lose the way to make money. So answer is not just paying customers, but paying who are making money on this, like this.
So one last question.
What kind of support does VC provide during pivoting and validating customers?
Okay, good question. So from the support comes from many different folds. Number one is moral support, first of all. And the second most important is the financial support. If we see there is a big risk or challenge, most likely the pivot won't get done before the company finishes the runway. So that's that. And another thing is we can introduce you guys to the potential customers. And also we can put together advisory board if needed, get some people with expertise and experiences to come to give you advice if we cannot give you enough suggestions or good feedback. So those are some of the things I can think about at this point. Yeah.
I love that. So this is going to be my very last question. What is one thing that you want the audience to think, do, or feel as a result of today's conversation? Your last final thought.
I can start since I have the microphone already. So do a good job. Be a good listener and observer. Listen to the data, listen to the user, and also observe your user's actions.
Yeah, I guess mine would be have an anchor and think very deeply about what your anchor is. It's like the Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, it's hard to get there. I think there's a lot of focus on movement and speed, which is very correct. But I think at the same time, you have to be moving towards something. And so, understand what you're actually trying to achieve, what value you're trying to give people, why your business exists, rather than just trying to be opportunistic and kind of moving for the sake of moving.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I would say that I always say on the panels, while Gen AI can commoditize the production, the story starts to matter way more. So think about your story. Story is the most powerful tool in a founder's arsenal. After OpenAI API, of course, but first the story. So think about what story you're telling, whom you're telling, and why you're telling it. Because people really underestimate this, and story is extremely powerful for any kind of from multi-app to B2B to B2C. Think about the story and tell it.
That is really useful. Thank you guys so much. And that's it for today's panel. Let's give it up.
Thank you so much. All right.